I want to kind of very, very briefly talk about like why the hell do we even need one? Like why do we need like speakers? I mean, it's kind of stating the obvious, really. Like right now, we are using a sound system to amplify my voice. In years gone by, I'm talking 500, 1,000 years ago. If you were in the kind of entertainment space where you needed to hear the voice of someone louder, they would make the space, as in, let's use the Globe Theatre or a Colosseum in Rome, that would be acoustically created to amplify the voice of people. That's just kind of how it would work. That's how noise was kind of amplified, was like through traditional means, but only to relatively small crowds, in essence. And then as time goes on, when people start to perform, like with orchestras, with classical music, that's just sheer volume of people in a room playing loudly will create the volume that's required. Then as time goes on, into the early part of the 20th century, this is when bands become a thing. We had like dance bands, Glenn Miller, that kind of stuff, playing like jazz music, dance music. That's kind of like the first ever dance music, really, in the 1920s, going into the 1940s. And at that point then, you would only really have a small loudspeaker to amplify the voice of the singer and nothing else. It was only in later years, in the sort of late 50s, coming to the 60s, is when the entire band would need to be played through the PA because they were playing to larger and larger audiences. So here's a good example here. This here is kind of like seen as like a semi-line in the sand of live sound reinforcement. It's not the best picture. It's in 1965, which is 60 years ago. Here the Beatles were absolute massive sensation at the time, obviously, and they were just doing their first USA tour, and they played to 55,000 people at a baseball stadium. The interesting thing is you can just about see it on the photo, these little white columns. The entire PA that they used to power that, which was powered by Electro Voice, which is the same people as these here who made these speakers. That PA there for 55,000 people was less powerful than one of these for 55,000 people. And people were screaming so loudly. The band, they had no monitors either. So the Beatles couldn't hear themselves and no one could hear the Beatles. It was kind of like live sound wasn't really at kind of like the point at this point to kind of produce audio and play it loudly. So this is kind of seen as like, in fact, I've got a photo. These are the loudspeakers here. That's what they used. They used like 10 of them or 15 of them for 55,000 people. It didn't work. But it was kind of like that then, as of then, that's kind of when people started to, in the pro audio world, start thinking about how they can use science and acoustics to build larger and larger things. I mean, that's another hour-long conversation, or probably something you guys might learn about in your course, like history of pro audio, maybe. This is kind of like the sort of thing that WEM, that was the name of one company. They kind of pioneers in making large PAs. But again, we're kind of like, I'm trying to talk about sound systems now and like what we think of as a sound system. So kind of, meanwhile in Jamaica, this is kind of where like the more traditional, if you ask someone in the kind of audio business, like what is a sound system? Usually it's a set of kind of like hand-built speakers, roughly. And something like that, something like this. So this is a guy called Duke Reed. He ran a record label called Trojan Records and Treasure Isle in Jamaica in the 50s. And effectively back then in Jamaica, these sound systems were a vehicle to kind of just get you to come to their party. So most people in Jamaica, the whole musical scene is kind of just completely different to kind of what we expected. There's no indoor venues just because it's sunny kind of all the time. So you just have your sound system outside. And people like Duke Reed wanted more people to come to his bar and drink his alcohol. So he just had larger and larger sound systems built. And this is kind of like, also as on a side note, this is kind of where the idea of kind of exclusives and special tunes came from, in that if this guy here, Duke Reed, he would go to America and he would go searching for rare records to play at his events. So people who would come to his events would only be able to listen to his music, kind of like an exclusive thing. So yeah, the kind of whole Jamaican scene breeded a kind of like a very much a DIY aspect. I mean, most of that stuff there is like literally cobbled together. You've got your traditional tannoy horn up there, made in Scotland. Oh, it's not working very well. That kind of there, with combined with kind of DIY boxes that were just kind of thrown together. Really, nothing too crazy. And then as the 1950s progress, as the 1960s progress, people from Jamaica, after the Second World War, the UK government invited people from the colonies, so to speak, to come and help rebuild the empire in the aftermath of World War II. The country was just in ruins, and there wasn't enough people to do it. So they invited the people from the Caribbean, the Indian, to come and work in the UK and help rebuild. And with it, they bought their own sound systems. So this here is a sound system from the late 50s, early 60s called Count Shelley. I mean, look at the size of that speaker box. It's taller than he is. Absolutely crazy. So these guys here, it was born out of almost necessity. So we as a country invited these people to work here, but we then told them that they weren't allowed to come to our clubs, which is a bit of a mad situation. I mean, there's a famous sign where it says "No blacks, no dogs, no Irish." It's a horrible part of UK history, but this is kind of important part to learn about. So these people here, who they wanted to go and listen to their music, and they wanted to listen to their music in the way that they had heard before in Jamaica, and that was on their own sound system. And again, this was kind of part of the idea that they would have something special, and they'd have something that no one else would have. So again, the idea is they would fly to Jamaica to go and get special tunes that no one else would had, and build crazy boxes like this. It's like proper crazy boxes. Because the thing is with reggae music, this is where we'll kind of come to in a bit, is that in reggae music, the melody effectively is the bass line. It doesn't really have like a lead guitar per se. The melody in the tune is the bass. So that's why there's a large emphasis on the bass line in reggae music. So that's kind of like a lot of the large sound systems were back then were so bassy is because they needed it for the music, effectively. So yeah, that's kind of a rough, very basic history of like why the intermingling between kind of pro audio, public address, and sound system, and that's effectively kind of where I see myself personally. That's where I see myself fit in, is that I've been inspired by seeing so many fantastic, amazing sound systems that have like, incredible fidelity, huge large arenas sound incredible. But then I also love proper hand-built DIY sound systems that people have made in their garage, and they sound crazy. That's kind of I love both spheres, but I also enjoy trying to merge them together to take the best bits of both